We did get a statement from the mayor's office, Mayor Karen Bass's office, Zach Seidel, her deputy mayor in charge of communications, saying that the mayor has spoken to Chancellor Block and Chief Dominic Choi, the interim chief of the LAPD. Zach says that the LAPD is responding immediately to Chancellor Block's request for support on campus. We have not seen evidence of that LAPD response. We are now almost 2 hours, more than 2 hours into this whole thing. But that is our first indication that Mayor Bass, who is in Washington right now, is up where it is almost 4 o'clock in the morning and coordinating this from there. And that this is that 3 a.m. phone call that we talked about, at least from her. We have not heard from the office of the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, who I believe is in Sacramento. We want to go back now to Dennis Zine, who is has been a member of the LA City Council, so he understands how the city government works, but also a longtime member of the LAPD and understands how law works. And Dennis, from your knowledge of both, can you talk about understand to be most likely happening behind the scenes right now?
What is happening now, mustering up units throughout probably the city of Los Angeles, not only West Bureau. There's 21 police divisions, 21 patrol divisions, and they've got to assemble officers from those divisions. They'll start with West Bureau, which is the west part of the city, and they'll get those officers at a location. They'll assemble them. Hopefully they'll have all their weapons and the non-lethal and the helmets, etc., the vests, and they'll muster them up, and they'll do a deployment. Again, they're going to follow direction of the UCLA police. They're the primary agency involved. They're California, they're regular police officers. LAPD will follow their command. They're the primary responsibility. LAPD will back them up whatever directions they give. UCLA may be calling their officers in from home because of we've been watching for the last couple of hours. They'll disperse the crowd. A lot of those people will just scatter. If they make arrests, if they're assaulted, whatever the case may be, but they'll quell this disturbance that we've seen, which, as you said, it protests during the Vietnam era. With my over 55 years of LAPD, I've been involved in many of those situations. This is exactly what happens. But the concern is that everybody keeps saying the police aren't there, the police aren't there. LAPD is not the primary responsibility to respond. It's UCLA. They give the call. Then LAPD units that are on patrol, handling calls, the radio calls, 911 calls, the other calls, booking prisoners, etc. Then they have folks at a location close to the campus, and then they're going to make sure that they're deployed, and then they will assemble a game plan to then go in. Are they going to make arrests? Do they have to bring jail buses? That will all be determined before they enter the campus. So people are wondering why aren't they dismissing these people, distributing throughout the area. There's a matter of practicality. You've got to get them there. You've got to get them deployed to that location, and they've got to leave the particular assignments that they're on, radio calls throughout the city of Los Angeles, all the 911 calls. So that's the problem. If it goes on attack alert, they'll bring officers from all over, all bureaus, all 4 bureaus. So there's a procedure involved. It doesn't happen quick. It's been a long time in coming, and we've seen a lot of hostility, a lot of combativeness. We've seen a lot of the activity that's illegal in a dispersal. They give a dispersal order, and then they'll be arrested. But the dispersal order, as soon as they see the uniformed officers show up, many of them will scatter to their cars and flee. Those, the hardcore, will be arrested if they decide not to leave and challenge the police. That's going to be, but that may happen at 1:30 or 2 o'clock this morning, because it doesn't look like this crowd is getting tired. It doesn't look like they want to leave. But that's the procedure that we have to follow. Again, I put the onus on the UCLA Police Department, and we know a few officers, a few cars were there initially, then they left. I don't know how they could turn their back on a situation as we've seen happening, unfolding here on Fox 11 this evening. But it's the procedure we have to follow. Again, our concern is we get the crowd moved out, but at the same time, we've got to protect the officers from getting injured.
Dennis, Marla is here. Fully understand the procedure that you just outlined for us. How long would that take? Because as far as we understand, Chancellor Block issued the call for LAPD probably about an hour ago. So how long does it take on average to assemble and do all of what you just said? Which I understand it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but how long can we expect?
You look at the number of officers deployed through the West Bureau, West LA, Pacific, etc., Wilshire, Hollywood. When you look at the number of officers deployed, they still have to have officers handle the calls in those particular areas. So maybe they can send 2 or 3 cars, maybe 4 cars. Depends what they have deployed this evening. They work 12-hour shifts. They're going to work 12-hour days. They started, and they'll be working a 12-hour shift. So it depends what the deployment is. If they go to the Valley Bureau, they're going to be traveling from the valley over. Fortunately, traffic is very light right now. They don't have to hassle flow. But the fact of the matter is they still have a responsibility to provide police service throughout the city. They can't say every black in the unit in the city respond. They still have to maintain the patrols within the areas of the city and send whatever they can afford to send. And then Metropolitan Division, which services the entire city, they may be calling them from home to respond. So they've been working these 12-hour shifts. Again, we've had the USC, we've got the UCLA, we've got these situations happening. And the department has been basically in a mobilization where everyone's required to wear uniform, including detectives. But it does take some time to get them mustered up to respond to this, especially a situation where you got so many. And as soon as they see the officers come in, many of those folks will scatter. They will leave. And the hardcore want to stay, then they'll be.
Yeah, well, we look forward to seeing law enforcement show up whenever. Seeing the 2x4s being thrown into the encampment. We've seen a lot of that tonight. We've seen a lot of pepper spray. We're now hearing from the mayor, who says that she has been in touch with Gene Block. He is the UCLA chancellor. We've gotten a statement from UCLA, from the vice chancellor of strategic communications, Mary Osaka. I believe we have that statement to throw up. You can see it at home. It says horrific acts of violence at the encampment tonight, and we immediately called law enforcement for mutual aid support. The fire department and medical personnel are on. We are sickened by this senseless violence, and it must end. So, Elex, you've been in touch with the mayor's office, giving us that statement, or putting out that statement for the general public as a whole. We're still waiting to hear from the governor. We're waiting to hear from Gene Block himself as just more of this anarchy unfolds at the campus that he was hired and is paid a lot of money to oversee.
But if you look at how this is unfolded, when they started setting up the camp, that's when they should have said, you're not going to set up a camp. When they permit that to happen, and then they go back and forth and they seesaw, they just embolden the people who were doing that, and then the professional agitators that want to come in and create chaos. When this first began is when they should have shut it down. No, you're not going to be able to camp out here overnight. That's not going to occur. So what happens is you give a little inch, a little inch, a little inch, and now we have what we have happening right now, which is embarrassing to the city of UCLA. And then they look, where's LAPD? Why doesn't LAPD solve the problem? Well, the university and the administration is the one that needs to stop this. Don't depend on the police to do the job that you're supposed to do as administrators and the folks that run UCLA. It's their responsibility to maintain a safe campus.
And Dennis,
we come in and clean up when they can't do what they needed to do.
And Dennis, that was earlier in our broadcast when we talked about that broken windows theory of policing, something I'm sure you're well familiar with, which is basically you can't just...
And that holds true.
Right.
Once you see this happening, and once they start gathering and then start to become combative, I mean, they should have responded, UCLA should have responded right away and put out a call, a tactical call that we may need to LAPD stand by. LAPD can then start putting a plan together. After what, almost 3 hours of time, or 2 hours of time, it's like, oh, let's wake up and do something. I mean, the cat's out of the barn. The barn's on fire. Now we're going to put together what we can put together.
It's a street fight down below.
And there's so many, and there's a lot of folks who are still criticizing USC for making that decision, for the fact that the first day we're putting out an encampment, they said, no, you're not going to do that here. That's not what we're doing. And they asked LAPD for help, and LAPD moved in at the time and place of their and got everybody out in a peaceful manner. And then they got so much pushback from the politics of all this, from some of the students on campus, that they've allowed a sort of encampment now on USC's campus, but they shut down the campus. They've been very, very clear about not letting people that aren't students there, and they've taken a bunch of security measures that have not been taken at UCLA. And so outcome is different with this because they have allowed this criminal element of people who are not students on campus onto the campus who are now a part of this, and they have shown no consequences for the folks who set up an illegal encampment in the first place, and no consequences for these violent agitators who are in opposition to the folks who have set up this encampment. And both have been able to not follow the rules of what's supposed to happen on a campus, and this pristine, elite college experience now looks more like anarchy, and the leaders still haven't said anything. And we still haven't seen them.
Exactly. But that's what you look at. Leaders. You mentioned the word leaders. Where is the leadership when they need to do what's right? And those students that have studied hard, the parents have spent thousands of dollars to get them there, and where's their graduation going to be? The graduation's not going to be what it needs to be. And this campus is going to be surrounded and with the image that's going to be continued throughout the country.